So, thank you very much. I have the fortune and the misfortune of being the last person to present today, I believe. The misfortune in that I risk being very repetitive. We've had so much interesting and stimulating content today, and a lot of what I have written down and will say kind of repeats that. But I also find this an opportunity to perhaps summarize in a simple list form a lot of the tools that we've heard in various forms and in various formats from our other colleagues during the day. So I'm here to represent, in fact, the 5 museums of the Toolbox project, 5 museums that have had different and, let's say, some more developed and some less developed relationships already with youth groups. We saw earlier that Kumu already had a very developed youth group before they embarked on the project of Toolbox, whereas many others of us didn't. We formed youth groups in order to carry out the project. What we found, though, in the feedback from my colleagues before we came to this symposium is that we've all kind of agreed that the same tools, or we've all come to the conclusion for a list of 10 tools that we feel have been relevant for all of us. So it was also interesting today to listen to other colleagues from other museums outside of the project who also in their different formats and in their different contexts actually talked about the same challenges that we all seem to be facing worldwide regarding this target group. And again, they seem to turn to similar tools or the same tools as I'm going to present to you now. So 5 museums, 10 tools, 20 minutes, perhaps less. We're all waiting for that glass of wine and some socializing. So I'll try to go through it quickly. So the first tool is internal communication, not a tool that's actually related directly to communicating with young people, but it's a tool that's very important in the communication process in general. The museums in our project, as with many other contemporary art museums in the world, are very young institutions. And they've become structured over recent years or recent decades and have become very professional. They now have highly qualified staff with plenty of experience, and they tend to have adopted organizational structures that are very hierarchical and departmental. And what the Toolbox project has actually forced us to do in some ways is to work in an inter-departmental project management process. So a curator, an education specialist, and a marketing manager have come together in each museum on the project to work on attracting young people. What this has made us realize is that actually it's very, very important that every one of these departments is involved from the programming right through to the communication in the communication process. So whoever's programming the activities for the museum has to consider the audience, the public, and the communication before the program is actually defined. And on the other side of the coin, marketing people in the museum, like myself, have to really get involved with that programming and involve, as we heard from Jasper earlier regarding storytelling, involve all colleagues in the communication of the museum's content towards the target group. For this reason as well, my presentation isn't the classic presentation that I would have perhaps thought of making before I embarked on this project. I've been working myself for 18 years in marketing and deal a lot with classical advertising, online and offline, etc. But I don't feel it's really the case now to talk to you about that particularly. I think I need to make a presentation that takes into account tools that are not just classic advertising or marketing tools, but include lots of other departments, lots of other activities, and lots of other ways of communicating in a museum that is not just something that's limited to the communication department. Moving on then, the second tool that we identified was collaboration with existing networks. We heard from several colleagues today that in order to attract a youth group or form a youth group for the project, they went out physically into schools and youth clubs and talked to the young people in the places where they felt more comfortable, so actually in their school or in their youth club. They also talked to people of authority, such as teachers or youth group leaders, who served as multipliers of the project to attract young people for us. We found that it was much easier and more efficient to approach young people actually in environments where they were comfortable. We found that certain tools such as flyers or classical advertising wasn't really bringing us the results we wanted. And we could also say that approaching young people where they are already present also applies to online and social media marketing, but we'll touch on that later. The third tool then is listening, and this brings me to the dictionary definition of communication, which is the exchange of information, i.e. a bilateral process. It's simply not enough to put out a message and expect our public, whether young or not, to have received it or especially to have acknowledged it. We really need to discover their expectations, their inhibitions, and their motivation levers. One of the strongest motivation levers that we have identified is participation. And again, we've heard this said many times today. So young people want to be creatively active. They want to learn for life, not necessarily for school. And they want to make a contribution. They want their ideas to be listened to, and they want their opinions to be heard. For this reason, we classify a youth group actually as a tool of communication. We saw a great example today from Kumu, but also from Palazzo Grassi and from other of our colleagues that have shown how youth group formation can really work, not just as an activity in the museum, but also as a communication tool, because it's through those experiences that the young people are going out and spreading the word of mouth about what they're actually doing in the museum. And what it is that they're doing is being involved in the everyday life of the museum, from the programming through to participation, through to, again, communicating for the museum. And by being part of a youth group, the teens or the young people, they feel important, they have a purpose, and especially they feel that they belong, we believe, or we've found out. And this belonging is very, very important, again, for communication, because when it comes to social media, we tend to only self-represent or share in social media things that we identify with, things that we feel are ours, things that show the way we are. And therefore, by belonging to a youth group, by the youth group, the museum being theirs, they're more likely, again, to share this content. I've put as number 6, get physical. What I mean by this is that we've been pleasantly surprised several times, and I think in all museums, about the fact that young people are not constantly connected. They are often connected, as Michaela said, and I think this has to be taken in consideration. But they are also seeking to socialize, to hang out with peers, to go to places together, and to form bonds and friendships. Therefore, it's very important that we offer them that possibility within the museum. And one way to do this is via events. This has proven across the board to be the most popular choice when asked by the youth groups of how they want to express themselves, how they want to present their results, etc. The people that organize, or the young people that organize the events, again, have a great responsibility and a feeling of importance. And those that take part are able to socialize, meet new people, learn new things. What we also found, and Simone very nicely confirmed this for us, that the later in the evening or night the event is, the more successful it tends to be. We come, therefore, to the point of social media. Social media is a very large part of my job, online marketing, social media in general. But I don't think this is the platform today to go into great detail. We've already heard or had some great inspiration through Jasper Visser earlier about storytelling on social media. And this really is very important. You see, social media is a communication tool in 2 different ways. On the one hand, it's a great way to get our content to circulate, as we also heard today from Victoria Walsh. And one of the ways to do this, as Jasper said, is through storytelling. But it's not just about putting out content. And the content that a museum puts out has to be of high quality. That's very, very important. And it has to be in a form and in the channels that young people are visiting. We found, or many of the museums here found, that actually video is one of the best ways to communicate via social media channels with young people. And for this reason, we've decided to create a YouTube channel as part of our Museum as Toolbox project, as we heard earlier. What's also very important, though, regarding social media And we heard this also from Michaela, and to some extent Jasper went as far as to say that all the staff in the museum should be involved in making the social media content, a point that I very, very much share. But I would go a step further, and I would say it has to actually be the young people themselves that are making the content. So this peer-to-peer approach in social media is an absolutely crucial key to communicating with youth groups. This brings me then to the point number 9, which is very much related to social media, but it's also relevant offline, and that's sharing and recommendation. The greatest goal in any communication or marketing strategy is to have other people talk well about your institution. This makes the content more credible, it makes the posts more authentic when it comes from people that have experienced it. And I come back then to the point I made at the beginning. Communication cannot, therefore, be limited to the communication department, because it's the content of the museum itself. It's the experience that the young people have in that museum, which doesn't lie, the responsibility for which doesn't lie in the communication department, but with my colleagues who are making the programs and that are spending time with the young people in the museum. And therefore, it's very, very important that communication takes these things into consideration before the communication plan is made. That's exactly what we said at the beginning. So, as number 10, I put free for youth, again across the board. We heard from all the museums that young people are scarcely willing, I may go as far as to say unwilling even, to pay for cultural activities, whether because they're, as I say, unwilling or whether they can't is another question. But certainly it's proven to be much better if activities are offered for free. Moreover, I'd say that some kind of financial compensation can be made to them for their time and their efforts, or to cover the costs that they've incurred, even better. And a further tool regarding finances is to create mini-jobs or paid internships, as we heard today, inside the museums to get the young people, again, actively involved, and to use them is an awful word, but then to exploit the fact that they will talk positively about this experience that they've had. So I went through the 10 tools, but I have one more fundamental point. And this is another thing I think you learn when you work in a contemporary art museum. You can always break the rules, and you have to be very flexible. So I'm actually going to make my 5 museums, 10 tools, 20 minutes, a presentation with 11 tools, just because I can. So the 11th tool I've actually preferred also strategically to keep separate, because I find it extremely, extremely important. And quite ironically, a point that's sometimes even forgotten by us in art museums, and it's the following: art and artists. The content of contemporary art museums in particular is considered often by young people cool, unusual, curious, something that they've never seen before. Yeah? We have to use that. That's our competitive advantage against all the other millions of offers that they're receiving for their free time activities. What we have to offer that's made in the museum, the creativity that we have in this engine that we're all working in, has to be used in the visual content, or as Jasper Visser said earlier, in our storytelling. We have everything there in order to be attractive to young people. We just have to channel it the right way, but let's use what we have. And the same thing can be said about the artists themselves. Artists are amazingly interesting people, sometimes very difficult, but not always. But the young people, they want to meet them. They can be inspired by them. They need to be in contact with the artists. And if we can go as far as to have the artists actually accompanying them and making or developing programs for the young people, then even better. So I'll sum up with a small quote from Albert Einstein, who said, "Creativity is contagious, pass it on." And I believe that this quote actually summarizes or underlines 2 of my 11 tools, the 2 that particularly lie close to my heart. Again, creativity, the artist, the art, and pass it on. So sharing the content you have by the people that are experiencing the museum themselves are absolutely crucial tools that must be in the toolbox of every museum. Thank you.